This video was brought to you by CuriosityStream.
Last year, we asked for your feedback on TLDR content, and I recorded a video where I responded to that feedback. Now, I think most of you enjoyed that open dialogue and transparency, so 18 months later, I'm back and doing the same thing. Last week, I asked you to submit your negative feedback about TLDR, and I'm going to react to some of the big trends today. I did also allow you to submit positive feedback too, because my ego couldn't cope with just endless critiques, and we'll be discussing that in a bonus section of this video.
So what is this discussion, or?
Kind of. It's freeform jazz, but mainly it's kind of self-eating freeform jazz.
The best kind.
Okay, so these are the categories of complaint I'm going to be responding to in this video. So if you want to skip forward the specific sections of this video, then you can use the chapters down below. 3, 2, 1. Okay, so bias is kind of an ongoing problem for us. It's kind of a problem whenever you say you're going to be unbiased, because as soon as you say that, you obviously open the floodgate to accusations from all sides about kind of correct bias. We're like, well, we actually are biased, and also times when it's just perceived but not necessarily a kind of a genuine bias. Either way though, it's sad to hear that people are still kind of noticing this in our content, because we genuinely are still committed to trying to make our content as apolitical as it can be and trying to be as informative as it can be without getting too biased. Now, I think there's always going to be some kind of bias in our content. It's pretty much impossible to separate kind of yourself and your own opinions from the content. I'd like to think we're getting better at it. We're certainly trying harder. We have more systems in place now to ensure that we're keeping ourselves to account, and also more people have eyes on the content and are reviewing the content and pushing back when there's kind of bias issues. But inevitably, some's still going to slip through. So apologies when that does happen, and I do appreciate being held to account on it. On a case-by-case basis though, because we don't really have time to go through every single instance in this video. Firstly, if you spot bias, you can report it to us. Right now, our website is being updated, but when the website is back, which it might be by the time you're watching this, there's an option to report bias in every video. So if you click onto the video you want to report and then scroll down, there's an option to report bias in the video. We don't respond to every message, but we do review every message, and when necessary, we respond. The other way though that you can kind of address this, and another way that we are addressing this, is through the editorial, which is our podcast where Zach and I, he's our editor-in-chief, sit down to discuss the latest couple of weeks and what we've been doing, the complaints, the videos, the bias, all that kind of stuff. And we kind of go through every video. We justify why we did things as we did. We explain the mistakes we've made. We apologize, etc. So if you want to see more specific analysis of our content, you want to head over to the TLDR Podcast YouTube channel, where you can find the editorial, or you can search for the editorial in your podcast app. Now, I will say we've been really unfortunate with the editorial lately. We recorded 2 episodes. One got lost. The other one, the audio stopped recording partway through. And we didn't realize before Zach went away for Christmas, at which point it was too late to record another episode. So we will be back in the new year as soon as Zach and I are back together. It should be about the middle of January. But we will be back, and we will be doing it more. So if you're really interested in bias, that's the way to kind of keep us to account and to track what's going on. When it comes to bias in business videos though, which is something that some people have been complaining about, specifically bias against Elon Musk, I think for me there is a separation here between business content and news content. So I think channels that have news in their title, you can expect the content to be as apolitical and fact-based as we can make it. Obviously, every other channel is also fact-based, and we're not trying to mislead you or actively kind of go against our principles, but the rules are a little bit softer when it's things like the business channel, when it's things like podcasts and stuff like that. I think there is an understanding there, and I hope that we kind of agree that there's a difference between the strict news and politics of our main channels and business, where we can have a bit more fun and be a bit looser. I think Elon is maybe an exception, and because he is kind of inherently a political figure at this point, so I will attempt to be more neutral on that going forward. But just setting expectations, the tone and the style of business videos, of podcasts, of other content that's not strictly news is different, and that's kind of intentional. So if that's an issue, I hope you understand there is a separation there, and if it's a big enough issue that you don't watch that content, that's obviously fine. But we're not holding ourselves to quite the same standard when it doesn't have the same consequences that politics does. Yeah, this one is super important. and one that I'm kind of glad that we're able to address. I'm pleased that people have called us out on it because it's something we do need to talk about. And you're right, our team isn't all that diverse. When you see us on podcasts and things, it's generally fairly similar looking people. We do have a very amount of diversity when it comes to kind of geography and when it comes to educational backgrounds, when it comes to kind of socioeconomic backgrounds and other things. But there are definitely areas where our diversity is severely lacking. That is something that's just kind of naturally happened. Our audience leans heavily male. That tends to be the case for YouTube News. I've spoken to other outlets and their channels look very similar, if not worse than ours. So when we're hiring, and we're hiring pretty much exclusively from our audience pool, that means that our candidate pool is pretty homogenous. Currently, or certainly when it's gone to previous hires, we've always used an entirely blind process in order to kind of root out kind of bias in the process. So up until the very last stage when we're interviewing, where we obviously have to see the candidate, we don't know who they are, we don't know what they look like, we don't know their gender, what, etc., etc. That was intentional to try and go against kind of bias issues, only using kind of a candidate number. But clearly that does lead to a pool of candidates, which is fairly male and fairly white. And then if we're whittling that down with no concept of who the individuals are, you're going to naturally end up with a final selection pool, which is pretty much entirely white men. In fact, the most recent application phase we did for animators, we had 100 and something applicants. And once that had been whittled down, and by the point we found out who the individuals were, there were only 5 people left and they were all white guys. So that's kind of how it's happened. That's not an excuse for the fact it's happened. It's just kind of how we've ended up here. Going forward, we're planning on changing the process a bit. We have previously spoken with charities and individuals that have expertise in this area about how we can improve things, especially as we reach a scale where we can afford to make hiring decisions beyond purely who does best in a test. So we are working on it. It's something we're looking to improve. And if you think you could be a good fit in our team that doesn't fit the normal mold of people we have here, then obviously you can let us know. You can apply at any time. You can put your name forward to be notified when we have spaces in the team. You can do that at tldrnews.co.uk/hiring, or just next time you're looking to apply, you can obviously make sure that you do, because we are looking for a better variety of people. So therefore, we'd obviously like to hear from everyone, regardless of all of the different factors. So that's kind of my thoughts on it at the moment. But I am very keen to hear anyone else's thoughts, anyone else's advice who's been in a similar situation. So clickbait, in my mind at least, is a bit of a loaded term. I think there's a scale here. I think there's the kind of clickbait videos which either promise one thing in the thumbnail and then don't deliver, or the content itself is pure clickbait and has no value, the video itself. And then you've got the other end of the spectrum, which I think is more where anything that we do that is kind of clickbaity lands, is where the title and thumbnail are kind of jazzed up a bit, but the content itself is still kind of educational and factual. Now, I totally understand why people still don't like that. I think from my perspective, it's a reasonably nice compromise in that the content itself isn't diminished at all. The videos haven't changed at all. We're just making exactly the same kind of stuff we always have been. We're not trying to chase kind of audience or clout or topics. We're just doing what we think is the best coverage we can. And then to sell that and then to get it in front of as many people as possible, which is ultimately our goal as both a business and as people trying to inform a young audience. We want people to watch our videos. So therefore we choose titles and thumbnails we think sell it in a way that's authentic, but also makes it seem interesting. Sometimes more interesting than the video itself actually is. So that's why we're doing it. I totally understand why it's annoying, and I totally understand why for certain people that's a turnoff. I think the conclusion we've reached over experimentation for the last 5.5, 6 years is that it does work more than even we would like it to. So we're always drawing a line kind of day by day, video by video on where we think is the furthest we want to go and what the most appropriate thing is for each video. So we don't really have a hard and fast approach, but I do think that one, we know it works. 2, that kind of aligns with our objectives as a business and as an organization. And 3, I think we normally fall on the right side of the line. Again, on the editorial, we do discuss individual instances where we do change things and we do backtrack and we agree that we have kind of maybe gone too far. But I think most of the time, the content itself stands alone, and therefore any issues with kind of clickbait in the title or thumbnail hopefully aren't too annoying and we can kind of just get into the video and get past it. Ultimately though, seeing your feedback, I will be more thoughtful, more considerate, and kind of reassess our position as we head into the new year on kind of what could be determined as clickbait in title and thumbnails. So thanks for the feedback on that. Yeah, it's a number of people reporting kind of small errors in videos, whether that be typos, repeating lines, or just kind of errors and glitches. It is something I think we're getting better at. I think I'm seeing fewer complaints like this, which is good. Obviously, it's still annoying that we are getting issues like this. I really hope throughout 2023 we can fully stamp this out. We have hired 2 new people recently that are working kind of on animation and video, and the hope is that with the extra capacity they give us, we're not necessarily going to start making a ton more content, but we're just going to make the content we are making better quality. And that means that we will be changing the style of our videos a little bit next year. It's something we're working on right now, but it also means that we'll have more time per video. So there'll be more of a review phase, and we're implementing new QC procedures on the back of your feedback and on the back of our own desire to make the content as good as we can. So thanks for the feedback. I hope we are getting better. Please continue to report it when you see it. And then hopefully in the new style and the new version of TLDR that you see in 2023, this is a thing of the past. But we are still human and we will still make mistakes. Apologies when it does happen. Pronunciation. This is an annoying one because I totally get why it's irritating, especially if you know how it's meant to be pronounced, especially if you think it undermines our credibility, our integrity when we're saying things wrong. So apologies when it does happen. I think the main thing I'd like to kind of emphasize here is that we genuinely do try. A video that might take kind of 10 minutes in its final version, if it's got a bunch of pronunciations we don't know, that recording probably took 20 minutes, half an hour, because we genuinely are looking up the pronunciations of these things and we're trying our best to get them right. Now, obviously we don't get them right all the time. That's probably sometimes because we're overly confident and we don't look things up that we think we know how to pronounce, but we don't. That could be because the pronunciation guides we use aren't always 100% reliable, especially for kind of smaller political figures or small towns and villages that we mention. It's quite hard to find a reliable guide. You'll quite often find that all of the guides are either just robotic voices
Slow the odds.
that are kind of useless, or they're in an accent which is very different from ours.
Valeri, Gerasimov.
So therefore it's kind of hard to replicate, or they're just contradictory. So that's often an issue. And then thirdly, we're just sometimes bad at it. We sometimes hear a pronunciation and then our version of it still doesn't match. So there's a number of issues there. I kind of want to emphasize that we are trying and we will continue to try and hopefully we're getting better. But please be aware that we are trying our best with it. And I get that's still irritating, but we are doing what we can. Yeah, it's kind of a mixed bag on references at the moment. I'd say about half of videos have a full listed reference section, but it's definitely not ubiquitous at the moment. And we are planning that as we roll out to kind of the new version of TLDR, the new animation style I mentioned a moment ago, we will see references come back properly. So watch this space, they will be back. It does take a bit of time. It adds time to the process, putting those references in. But it's something that is kind of factored into the new system and something we will be using our new resource to make sure that we're able to do. Yeah, a lot of people are requesting either we cover their country specifically more or a country they're interested in or start a new channel specific to their country. I'll kind of tackle both separately. Firstly, when it comes to individual videos, we generally try and cover topics that either we kind of have expertise in already, which is obviously saves us a bunch of time and allows us to be certain that we're getting things right or as right as we can, or we're choosing countries which we think the audience will be interested in. There'll be enough kind of engagement to justify the additional effort to learn about that country or to kind of do extra research, reach out to people, etc. So that's kind of our thought process when we're choosing topics and countries to cover. I think we are increasing our remit of countries kind of year by year. We're kind of gaining new knowledge and there's new countries we feel comfortable talking about. But we're not going to be able to ever cover everywhere. We're never going to be a BBC or a CNN, which has bureaus all over the world and reporters ready to go. If that's the kind of coverage you're looking for, I think in all honesty, we're never going to be able to get there, or at least not for a long time. So maybe there's other outlets that can fill that gap better than we can. When it comes to new channels, we don't have a plan for any new country-based channels at the moment. We don't have any plans for any new channels full stop at the moment. But I think it's unlikely we'll be adding any more country-specific channels, whether that be kind of a TLDR South America or a TLDR Asia or a TLDR China. Those topics and those countries will continue to be covered on the TLDR Global channel. So if you want the biggest kind of range of news, that's probably over on TLDR Global, and we're planning on increasing that as we head into the new year. So Apologies, we can't cover every country. We are interested in the countries you want us to cover, so we can kind of lean that way in the future. But there won't be any new channels specifically for countries anytime soon. Yeah, so this is one we always get, that there's kind of too many promos or too many adverts within videos. The first thing I'd say is this isn't something new. A lot of people like to say that things have changed here, or that we're getting worse, or that they missed the days when there didn't used to be promos. Now, there was a time, a very long time ago, when we didn't used to promo anything, but pretty much since the vast majority of our audience has been watching TLDR content, we've been promoting something in every video, whether that's subscribing to the channel, whether that's subscribing to other channels, whether that's promoting our merch, our Patreon, whatever. We've kind of been doing it for a while. Now, that doesn't mean that it's not annoying, but it's certainly not a new thing, and we certainly haven't increased the amount of promos we're doing. Pretty much every video has kind of always had a promotion in it. The thing that has changed this year is the fact that we're taking kind of more external promotions, things like Nebula, CuriosityStream, Brilliant, VPNs, etc. And that obviously is slightly different from us promoting ourselves, but it has also allowed us to massively increase kind of our scope. We've been able to grow the team because of it. We've now got a separate studio and office, so I'm no longer recording this among a bunch of desks and annoying everyone. So we've been able to grow massively over the last year or so, thanks to Nebula and thanks to these sponsorships. So firstly, I really appreciate you guys clicking the links, signing up for the things, etc. It's been really helpful. Please continue to do so if you feel inclined and you can afford to. But thank you for that. But that's essentially why we've been doing it. It makes financial sense for us to do it. And we're choosing sponsors that we genuinely believe in, services we genuinely use, and we will continue to. We will never promote something that we don't actually believe in. So I think it's one of those things that I get you don't want it. No one wants kind of adverts, but it just is a function of the creator economy. And we're doing our best to ensure that the kind of adverts we are including are ones that we really believe in. And they always have been so far, and they will continue to be. The other thing I'd say on this is that we always put our promos at the end of videos, besides the tiny bit at the beginning where I say something like,
this video was brought to you by CuriosityStream.
or whatever. The rest of the promo is all at the end. And with the exception of maybe some tiny funny clips or bloopers that we once or twice have put after the promo, you can pretty much assume that when the promo starts, the video is done. There's never really anything hidden behind that. Again, besides a couple of funny times we've like added clips. There's never any content behind there. I wouldn't even really bother fast forwarding to see if there's a funny clip at the end, because odds are there's not. We've done it like 2 or 3 times that I can remember. So I think the way that we implement it is about as good as we can do, especially for news. I think there's other kinds of creators that definitely can integrate kind of promotions at the beginning of videos or during the video. But for news, I think it is better that we're separating it and making a real clear dividing line of when the sponsor begins. And yeah, that's something we're going to continue doing anyway. So I think the main thing here is I think we're implementing it about as well as we can. My general message is, I'm sorry if it's still annoying, but hopefully the fact it's at the end of the video and you can just stop watching as soon as you're not interested, kind of separates it as much as we can. And in doing that, we can ensure that we're kind of making everyone happy and that we're able to continue running and continue growing, which is obviously our main objective. Yeah, finally, the one that you probably were interested in, paywalls. A lot of people complaining that this year we're paywalling more content. That is kind of true. Thanks to Nebula, we're able to put content that doesn't really fit on YouTube elsewhere. And we're also just making kind of original explainers for Nebula too, which has been really fun, and it's been cool to be able to offer additional stuff for the people supporting us on Nebula. That's just kind of how subscription services like this work. The thing that people are complaining about most, though, isn't necessarily that things are being paywalled, because I think most people kind of understand the way that works. I think people are worried or annoyed that we're paywalling news, which at least in my mind, we don't do and never really have done. I think there's obviously a continuum here between kind of general education and news, and the content we're putting exclusively on Nebula is much closer to the general education side of things. Things like our video on a potential chocolate cartel, our video on the country where you'll definitely be killed. Things like this aren't videos you need to watch. They're not breaking news. They're not going to impact an election. They're not going to change how you think about politics necessarily. They're more general explainers. And I'm sure there will be some paywall content that leans slightly more news, but we're never intending to kind of paywall primary news, the kind of key stuff you need to know. That will always be on YouTube. So if you are worried about us paywalling news, hopefully that explains our thought process and the fact that at least in our eyes, we're not doing that. And we don't really have any intention to do that anytime soon. That's not to say that paywalling news is necessarily a bad thing. There's some really great outlets that do that I really look up to and respect. So it's not that I'm saying that business model doesn't work or shouldn't work. It's just not what we're doing because it doesn't really fit our objectives when it comes to informing, especially young people and especially people who aren't that politically engaged. The best way of doing that is making our content publicly available and putting it out there for everyone. So it just makes sense for us kind of on our broader business objectives, even beyond the fact that we just don't want to paywall things because we want people to watch our stuff. Speaking of which though, and this is a bad transition, so apologies for it, but we do have some paywall content associated with this video because not only did we ask people for their negative feedback, which I've now hopefully addressed. If I haven't, let me know in the comments and I'll try and address further or answer further questions. We also asked people for their positive feedback, which the team and I ran through earlier in the week, and we kind of discussed and talked through, and hopefully it's a bit of a fun video and a bit of a funny video.
Side note, I like Ben's eyebrows.
Okay.
It's like if one of your animators makes them dance in post. Lol. Have a look when he presents. Once you see it, you can't unsee it. It's not bad. It's a fun, good thing. Most of that is about your eyebrows. Jack is quite cute.
Yeah.
I love the style and the guy in glasses who is on TLDR IDK, what his name is.
That's me.
The cute one with the glasses isn't on enough. Blue eyes is kind of hot, so I'll allow it.
Yes, blue
How many?
eyes.
I want to know,
Blue
Jack,
eyes.
Jack, I need to know honestly, how many of these did you write?
I think my mum did a few,
I
so
see.
she doesn't
I
know
see.
my name either.
Yeah.
She forgot. Blue eyes is good though. I don't know if that's an appropriate nickname
That's
we
an
can give
office
you,
nickname.
but I like it.
Wait, who?
You're Blue Eyes,
Oh, is that
surely.
me?
Yeah.
Oh, I didn't realise. I thought.
This one is Ben is a stud.
Wow, that one's specific. They know your name and everything.
That's
Yeah,
you.
That's there is no
Undeniably you.
denying that. Yeah,
You blue-eyed
that is.
stud.
I
What'd you
don't
say
have
to
to
that?
take that. I don't. Do you know what? This might be the first time I've ever been called that, and I don't know how to respond.
Stud is a weird.
It's a weird one.
Weird
isn't it? It's a
descriptor.
Who
weird
would you
descriptor.
describe as a stud?
Paul Hollywood.
In the kind of original
Yes.
agricultural sense
Sure.
of the word, what it means, but I don't really want to. I don't want to
Yeah.
talk
You know
about
what it means.
You know what that means?
Agriculture?
Yeah, the
Horses.
stud.
Horses.
I didn't know that.
Yeah.
Do you know what we mean now?
Is a male horse?
No. Well, yes.
That
but
gets kind of
It's the one.
used
It's the one
for-
that gets used around that gets
One that
taken to all the farms.
Milked. Oh no.
No, well,
It also helps to watch the content that both Ben and Jack are charismatic enough to carry out. I'm sure with more practice, Zach will be great.
Again, not necessary viewing. It's just us patting ourselves on the back, basically. But if you are a Nebula subscriber, that video is out there right now. So you can check that one out and see what positive things people had to say. If you're not a Nebula subscriber, then now is a good time to sign up. You might not get any paywalled news because that's not something we do, but you will get paywalled explainers, you'll get fun videos, and you'll get content from other creators too. So let me in the past explain to you how you can sign up and how you can take advantage of the Nebula sale, which should still be ongoing when you're watching this video. Normally, people sell you stuff as being less than a cup of coffee, but this is less than a bottle of water and a fraction of what other streaming services are charging. Services which don't even directly support independent creators. Now, this crazy good offer is only available right now and is only possible through the Nebula Curiosity Stream bundle. Essentially, if you sign up for Curiosity Stream for the incredibly low price of $11.59 a year, then you'll get access to Nebula as well for as long as you're a member. That's right, 2 streaming services for less than $1 a month. And Curiosity Stream is awesome. It contains an absolute boatload of high-quality documentaries on all kinds of topics that I know TLDR viewers will love. So if you want both services for less than $1 a month, then the link is down below. And if you've ever considered signing up to support TLDR, then now's the cheapest time to do so.